Justice Nwaigwe, the newly elected chairman of the Gwinnett County Republican Party, has quickly emerged as a key figure in Georgia's conservative landscape. His leadership focuses on grassroots mobilization, party unity, and policy advocacy, aligning with the broader Republican strategies in suburban counties. Born in Houston, Texas, Nwaigwe's journey includes military service in the United States Air Force, a career in consulting, and a bid for the Gwinnett County Commission Chairman position in 2024. During the Board of Commissioners race, his platform emphasized fiscal responsibility, infrastructure improvements, and strengthening public safety. Those themes have shaped his approach as the Gwinnett County Republican Party chairman. As chairman, he prioritizes local engagement, pushing for stronger connections between the Gwinnett GOP and the voters, particularly in an increasingly competitive political environment. His Christian faith also plays a role in his values-driven leadership, shaping his advocacy on issues important to his constituents. Justice Nwaigwe is part of Georgia's new generation of Republicans who understand the need for fiscal responsibility, individual liberty, economic opportunity. Get ready for a one-of-a-kind conversation with Justice Nwaigwe. Hi, we're with Justice Nwaigwe. Did I say that right?
You nailed it.
All right. I just want to make sure. Whenever you put the an N next to a W followed by an A, you've got a poor Southern guy. I don't know where to go with the pronunciation. I'm sorry, but anyway, I'm glad I got it. Thank you so much. And Justice is the new chairperson for the Gwinnett County Republican Party. We're thrilled to have him on the show, and we're going to learn a lot about him today. Justice, we always start off our episodes with a shout out to our local economies. We support the local economies and locally owned businesses. Can you give us a shout out to a locally owned business in your area?
Yeah, in Gwinnett County, there are two that I'm fairly fond of. One is a printing trade company in Simpson Circle in Norcross. They do a lot of great work for a great price, and they have a beautiful finished product. The other one is a small local restaurant which just opened in the Hamilton area called Super Tacos. Family owned, small business, but phenomenal food on Brazelton Highway.
Awesome. Love it. Well, let's get into the interview here. What got you interested in politics? Because you did have a run for the Gwinnett County Commission Chairman, and you are now the party chairman. So what got you interested in the local politics then?
Well, the time I've been in Gwinnett County, it's been a huge change. We talked about this momentarily ago, but the amount of change and the type of change are the two things that have really concerned me. And as a citizen, as a father, as somebody who works, plays, and likes to live in this community, I wasn't going in a great direction from schools, from safety. And a lot of my friends, even my next door neighbor, would sit and talk about all the things that we're witnessing that are happening that are not good. And I've gone to a few of those commissioner meetings down at the GJAC building. But, one day my friend was like, you seem to know a lot about this stuff. And you seem to be very concerned when you actually do something about it. And that was essentially his indirect challenge to me. And I said, you know what? I think you have a good point. I should do a lot less talking and complaining, and I should take action. So that's what really got me involved.
Awesome. Well, I know that Gwinnett has had periods of skyrocketing growth, not just growth, but just rapid densification of certain areas in the county. And I do know kind of the shopping malls. I've watched where Jimmy Carter Boulevard used to be the only commercial area in Gwinnett County when I was younger. And then it's gone from one mall to another mall to another mall. And now you got the big one in Buford. How do you deal with all of that growth in Gwinnett County? I mean, in terms of infrastructure, schools, crime, perhaps, just transportation issues. How do you deal with all that?
Well, the question of how do you deal with all that right now, it seems like nobody's dealing with all that because it's going all kinds of out of control. So you talk about the infrastructure, the schools, the traffic. That's been a major pain point for so many Gwinnetians. And when I look at individual metrics as far as what's being measured, it comes down to the county commissioners. They have this 2045 unified plan, which really has a basis on what's called a 15-minute city. And it's interesting they're adopting this at a county level and at a city level, but they're trying to make things convenient for people, which is everything within 15 minutes. However, it seems to be backfiring pretty seriously when you think about all the additional problems that it brings, from the schools being pushed to maximum capacity to the roads being pushed to maximum capacity. Even our sewer system underground is not built for this amount of people. So there's a lot of infrastructure that probably wasn't thought ahead. And I think that's what the people got to stand up and start talking about now, and going to these meetings of planning and zoning and the board of commissioners and make their voices heard. Just like I decided to do a few years ago, is get involved. That's the only way we're going to make real positive change in Gwinnett.
And I know, as somebody who was in politics, local politics, for 20 years, over a period of 20 years, a lot of people, including elected officials, don't realize the cost of that exponential growth like what you're having. It comes with all the maintenance, all the services, everything else has to be doubled and tripled in some cases, especially in Gwinnett, as fast as you're growing. But I do know, too, that Gwinnett has had several votes, two I think that I know of, in order to join the MARTA system. And it just seems like, they keep forcing the apartment complexes in one after another, and they're going to set up another vote for the MARTA system. Do you think it would pass if it did come up on a referendum again?
My thoughts is no. And you make a great point. They've brought the referendum several times in the past, and all the times it's come up, it's been defeated by the people of Gwinnett who voted against it. But it almost appears as if the Gwinnett County officials are trying to exacerbate the traffic problem to be so bad, to force the people into submission and say, fine, just bring in the trains and buses. But I think the will and the might of the Gwinnett people are a little bit stronger than that, and we see what's being done, and we'd rather have our voice heard versus have a solution forced on us.
And the one thing with the MARTA system, and most mass transit systems throughout the United States, they're seeing a significant decline in ridership. But yet the costs are still there in terms of providing the infrastructure, the employees, the staffing, the electricity to run the system. The costs don't go away, but the ridership can fluctuate greatly. And MARTA seems to be in a downward slope as well.
Yeah, I think Martyr's not in a good position, but even just here with Gwinnett Public Transportation, they have the bus system, and that's been a huge talking point here. And I read into this, I researched it myself, I wrote it once or twice, but our buses for Gwinnett County Transit are usually around 8 to 10% capacity. Nobody
Right.
is on these buses. And to your point, they're being paid for by the people of Gwinnett to keep running. Well, nobody's really using them. So the ridership, what I read up, is that they're trying to have a particular ridership target they could get to get federal funding stipends for having that public transportation. So they're really trying to obtain federal funds by having this, which I think is a great point where Department of Government Efficiency is trying to crack down on that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Well, I know you were a Houston native, I read. When did you move to Gwinnett County?
I've been in Georgia since 2011, but I moved to Gwinnett County in 2018.
Okay. So you've seen a lot of change just since then, I would imagine.
Oh, it is unrecognizable from the time I moved till to today, completely.
Personal note, who's the most influential person in your life?
The person who probably has the greatest influence are probably my father. My dad immigrated to the United States in the late 70s from a different continent, and he didn't have a lot of money. His English wasn't the greatest. His accent was still pretty tough, but he worked extremely hard to put himself through school, working night jobs, and any kind of adversity that he faced. He always found a way to make it work. And even to this very day, he's going to be 72 in August, and he's still an entrepreneur to this very day. He works for himself, and he's living the American dream. And that's why people are fighting tooth and nail to immigrate to this country to live that American dream.
And I find that so many people who immigrate to the country, they still buy into the American dream concept. They see the potential because from where they've come from, it's been a drastic change, and they see more opportunity. And a lot of our younger people today, young adults, they don't see the opportunities now. They're very discouraged. They're kind of depressed. How do we get them more hopeful how do we get them more involved in creating the change through the Republican Party? What are you doing in Gwinnett related to that?
Great questions. So you mentioned the younger crowd feeling depressed and defeated. And that really comes down to their worldview and their perspective. You know, if they've never really left Beaufort or Tequila or anywhere, they wouldn't really have a sound worldview of what struggles could really be. And then the other piece is just ownership and accountability, right? I think that's why I selected my father as being somebody who's inspirational. Is he always owned his shortcomings and was holding himself accountable to a higher standard. And I think there's this generation that did pass where the parenting was very what they call gentle parenting, and they try and cater to the child versus let the child find their way through adversity and struggle, and that build that character. And I think that's what we're going to try and get back to. That is having people responsible for where they are in life, and also helping them find ways to get there where they want to be. But that adversity is a key piece of character building.
I talked to some of my contacts that I have in Gwinnett County through Facebook, who live in the same jurisdiction as you, and I asked them for some, thoughts and questions that I could possibly bring to you. And one of them was, are you witnessing any kind of significant opposition to gun rights and religious liberty in Gwinnett County? Are you seeing that? Because we know the government has shifted, the county government has shifted. Used to be a Republican stronghold.
Yep.
Now it's shifting Democrat in a big way. Most of the constitutional officers are heading in that direction, if not already there. Has that shift created any problems with religious liberty and gun rights that you know of?
You know, in all the smaller groups that I'm in touch with and part of, and even my time in the community, I have not seen such a thing. Although Gwinnett County isn't the Republican stronghold it once was, I still believe the vast majority of people that live here have conservative values to a certain degree and hold themselves as such. So I haven't seen anything about religious liberties or gun rights come up at all.
And then the school system in Gwinnett's always been touted. The science charter school is one of the best in the state and ranked high in the nation. Do you see any type of the political ideology kind of flooding into your school systems now related to transgenderism or sexual exploitation or leftist ideology that we keep seeing about more and more about on the internet?
Unfortunately, the answer to that is yes. It's certainly made its way to Gwinnett County Public School System. As a father, I have 4 kids that are in GCPS schools, and I get stories every single day from them. And it's interesting because, you know, my kids in my household, I kind of give them perspectives of the real world. So when they go to school and their social studies teacher tells them that we live in a democracy, and my 11-year-old son is to correct her and say it's a constitutional republic, then they get to a debate in front of the class where he's ultimately correct. The 11-year-old is correct in the situation, but there are these Pride Alliance things that they have in the schools. They have, at one point, there were litter boxes in the bathrooms for kids that identified as animals, or the case was. So, unfortunately, the school system is down the drain, and it's just filled with fraud, waste, and abuse on top of that as far as a budgetary perspective. So we need great leadership. They already ousted the last superintendent who's done a lot of nothing to really help. So we're in a really bad place with the school system.
Is the party doing anything to circle around the schools and try to get the PTAs going and, create some sort of opposition to what's going on?
So that's one of our primary steps. The executive committee just convened last Thursday, and 2 of the things we talked about is how we're going to get the party involved and things like that. So the school board meetings are monthly, and there are also election board meetings that happen every single month. And there are just so many different groups in Gwinnett. But as a party, we need to show up and lead those conversations, not just from a support perspective, but also have a stance on it and make our voices heard as a party. So that is absolutely one of our top priorities.
And has the party itself in Gwinnett connected with any maybe a sister or related type of groups like Moms for Liberty or other groups that might support your positions in the school system?
The party has had contact with like-minded groups in Gwinnett and outside of Gwinnett prior to my coming in. So the previous administration did a pretty good job establishing relationships. The other thing we discussed is making sure we partner with them so we know where their meetings are, so we don't have our meetings on conflicting nights, so we could both join each other's. So yes, that's a huge thing that with strength in numbers is going to be key for us going into this primary season.
Well, one of the other questions I got from someone who lives in Gwinnett, they wanted to know, are the local police departments and the sheriff's office cooperating with ICE on illegal immigration?
That is a good question. So I haven't spoken to the chief of police nor the sheriff. However, I do recall from my run last year and even the beginning of this year that the sheriff has refused to enforce the 287G and partner with ICE. That, from what I understand, the Gwinnett County Police Department is more participatory, but the sheriff in charge has opted out from what I understand. So that is another problem that we have in Gwinnett that we need law enforcement to be on the same page with our administration.
You all looking for a potential candidate maybe to run against the sheriff on that issue? Because I know it's a hot button issue.
It's a huge hot button. So sourcing candidates is one thing that is my major priority as chairman. So I'm looking at all the seats that are coming up in the next two cycles and trying to find people now to get involved to run a campaign that are suitable but also committed for the duration. So sourcing candidates, I've already spoken to two or three for various seats, but not necessarily sheriff just yet. But sourcing candidates is huge for us.
Have you created as a county a platform related to land planning and transportation issues? Because Gwinnett, of course, is world famous for that exponential growth, but all these multifamily housing complexes, is that becoming an election issue, do you think, for like the county commission?
It is becoming an election issue. Even the last election cycle, the high density housing was one of the most debated and discussed topics just because of the unintended outcomes it brings to the communities. And the folks of Gwinnett have had enough. Just and I mentioned to you, I moved there since 2018, right? So Gravel Springs Road, which is close to my house, which goes over the 85, it wasn't even an exit by then. Now it's a full exit off the freeway. And to get from Auburn Road over here down to Gravel Springs to the freeway, sometimes it's about 20 minutes to go down a stretch of that's like 2.5 miles. So that kind of density backs us up quite a way. So it is an issue. And I think the people of Gwinnett have had enough of it. And I think they're ready to stand up and actually do something about it.
I do know in Cobb County, which is also seeing a lot of really exponential growth in the multifamily complex sector, their school superintendent has actually come out publicly on the television news and decried the continual development of these types of things because the schools are getting so overwhelmed they can't guarantee that they've got enough classroom space and they can provide a quality education. So are you seeing a lot of trailers behind schools now, or do you think that's the tidal wave that's coming behind your schools?
I would say both. It's happening now, and it's also a wave to come if this exponential growth is allowed to continue unregulated. And the story mentioned about Cobb County, I read about that one, and I think the board of commissioners have to call a special meeting to hear what that superintendent was talking about because it does create so much more distress on the classroom and the other students. But even at the elementary school where my child goes, 3 new trailers have gone up in the last 24 months. And I foresee the same with the middle school and the high school where my kids are going. The amount of kids coming in here is just, it's not containable and it's not sustainable long term. But we're have to do the same, follow the same footsteps as Cobb County as far as having a superintendent be a voice. But right now, we don't have a superintendent.
Right. Well, I do know too that Gwinnett is very multicultural now. According to the statistics that I saw, Gwinnett has the largest Hispanic population of any of the counties in Georgia. You have a very large Asian population, very strong Korean population specifically. What are you doing in terms of multicultural outreach?
That's a great question. The amount of diversity in Gwinnett County is crazy. That's, I think, one of the coolest features about the county is how you can have so many different ethnic groups that work together as one for their community. So outreach right now, I'm at the point of appointing different committees inside the party, so we can have different outreach for different ethnic groups. I'm also meeting with another person next Monday, I believe it is. Yeah, I'll set up an appointment for next Monday for the Latino outreach. Her name's Camila. She reached out to me today, but that is just one of those missed opportunities that I feel like we've had here in Gwinnett is there are so many people that don't see us or speak to us. We don't come to their communities or neighborhoods because we're so focused on a voter list that has hard R behind it. But there's so many people, like I said, are conservative minded, without a doubt, but they just need us to come speak to them, and we can join in the same cause.
I do know that Gwinnett does have some Hispanic elected officials in the state legislature. I don't know about the cities and the county as much, but I have recognized that they do have some representation in the legislature. I think one is a Democrat and two are Republicans, if I'm not mistaken. Um, as far as the party goes, do you have a lot of Spanish speakers in the party now that you can utilize to do outreach?
Well, when you say a lot of Spanish speakers, compared to the 426 miles of Gwinnett, probably not that capacity, right? But when you think about, so for District 6 for us, which would be like South Lawrenceville, Little Burn, we do have people, and my wife being one of them. We do have people, but there are so many more people that are part of the party but aren't official members. That we've had events where we've had people show up with Latinos for Trump, with their MAGA hats on, all those things, but capturing those folks as being part of the party is where we're missing the boat. So that's what we're going to double down on and make sure that they're part of us, our party.
Yeah, there's a lot of Latino support for Donald Trump. I have
Oh,
seen it all over Facebook. My local Facebook friends through metropolitan Atlanta, they are very patriotic and they really have a sense of what they want. And I think it's part of that immigrant thing we talked about before, where they come in, they see the opportunities, they want to have those opportunities, being able to be an entrepreneur, lower taxes, smaller government, all that benefits everyone, regardless of your nationality.
I would agree 1,000%. And even outside of Latinos, a lot of immigrants in general have conservative family faith-based ideals, which make us align to our party closer than the others. And I think there's just a generational gap. I think the folks that are immigrants from their original country uh, understand the significance of coming to a country like America and having the opportunity to succeed. Where sometimes those immigrants have children here that already in America, and they don't have that purview or that perspective of what it's like outside the country, so they don't really understand how great it is to be here.
I know a lot of people across the nation, not just in Gwinnett County and in Georgia, but across the nation, they have a severe lack of confidence in government. And I think Congress does more to diminish people's expectations than any other body. But what should we expect from your perspective? What should we expect from Republicans that we elect in office? For our federal elected officials all the way down to our local city officials.
An expectation for me would be top two priorities are accountability and transparency. I think our presidential administration has done a fantastic job of that, specifically with the Department of Government Efficiency. Just the sheer amount of waste they've uncovered in the first 100 days is just mind-boggling. And when you talk about people are mistrusting the government, that's at the federal level, right? And a lot of people have that inkling, like, I'm pretty sure something's off there. Like our Gwinnett County Public Schools, their budget has gone up every single year, where their amount of students have stayed almost the same for the last 4 years, right? So now they're at what, $3.5 billion for their budget, and most of that stuff is not really mathing out as far as it being accounted for. So fraud, waste, and abuse, I think most people are there, but now we're starting to materially see how it's being wasted and abused.
And I think, Justice, I think it used to only be in terms of the federal government that we used to think, oh, it's so big and the bureaucracy and it's out of control and I can't even remember who my representative is and things like that.
Yeah.
But like you said, we are seeing that now at the local level like never before. I know in my town, Peachtree City, on the south side of metropolitan Atlanta, we've seen we had a population growth of 7,000, but the budget doubled. And we're like, how does that happen? I mean, if we're just in shock, how does that happen? 7,000 people, but the budget doubles. And so, I mean, we're seeing this all over the place. And I think people are now just taking for granted that government's going to do whatever government's going to do. And we kind of, since the Tea Party days, when we had the Tea Party that got started and there was kind of a rebellion, we've lost the will to rebel. with the local governments and the federal government. Do you think we can ever get that back? I think, or is Trump a sign that we still have some fight left in us?
You couldn't have said it any better. I think Trump is exactly what this country needed at this time to show how you essentially take the bull by the horns. And our Constitution, even our Georgia state Constitution, says when the people do not feel the government's fit, we can remove them. Right. And I think it's starting to give hope back to people that too much is too much. You mentioned the Tea Party. That was over like a 2% tax. Right. Over here, we're getting charged over 30 year over year. And we're just laying down and taking it. So we need to reinvigorate the people. And that's what my party plans to do this next 2 years that I'll be around for the chairmanship, is to get people present, active, and engaged and pushing back.
Well, I do know the astonishing point with the Trump election. He saw a 35-point swing with Hispanic men. He won the black male vote. A lot of people didn't see that coming. Did that happen in Gwinnett County? Did you see the same kind of rise in those two demographics in Gwinnett County in the voting?
Not to the degree of a national level. I mean, unfortunately, here in Gwinnett County, Trump's opponent had more votes than he did overall. With those two demographics you mentioned, the swing wasn't nearly as high as it was in the nation. But I still think that brings to the point that people are starting to wake up. And more importantly, Trump is a real human being versus look at the opponent who are these programmed, talking off pre-written scripts. People aren't relating to that anymore. They want the real human, real personality. Trump has plenty of personality. That's what people really gravitate toward. He's just very honest and he's a straight shooter, and people can respect it. They may not like him, but they can respect that he's a straight shooter.
Well, there's a debate now too about, was the rise in those two demographics a sign of the Republican Party starting to catch fire, build some momentum, or was it just all Donald Trump? To your point, where you're talking about they kind of, Trump had that macho, I'm going to say it like it is, he's a one of a kind kind of personality. Do you think it was the leap in those two demographics was primarily a Trump based thing, or can the Republicans hold on to it after Trump is gone in 3 years?
That's a brilliant question. For my assessment, I say most of that is attributed to Trump being who he is, running in 2016 as an outsider, coming in, doing what he did, learning some hard lessons, coming back as 47 to do it. I think the Republican Party is well poised to walk into the golden era and build on what the foundation he's already built by showing up.
Well, let me give you another one of the questions that I got from somebody in Gwinnett. It said a new Yale University youth poll found that voters age 18 to 21 lean Republican by 11.7 points. And they say, is the Gwinnett County Republican Party doing anything to capitalize on this?
Yeah, the youth is really where it's at. I've actually been very impressed with the youth in Gwinnett County. We had our first county committee meeting at the end of April, and we had a lot of new faces, a lot of young, fresh faces that I've been impressed with. But to answer your question, what we're doing about it, we're trying to form strategic partnerships with some of these colleges, campuses to set up tents and speak to youth on there. And I think they're at an impressionable age where the media, the mass media, is telling them to be one way, to conform, to follow these rules. And in the inside, I'm sure they want to express how they really feel. And I think having a place to connect and speak to people and meet them where they are is the right thing to do. So we're trying to find these spaces on college campuses where we can go there as a political organization and have these conversations.
And I think, one of the things I like that they're actually getting a chance to see is that the internet now, whether you love it or hate the internet, some of these podcasts now are starting to reveal a lot of conservative thought and stuff like this. They can't censor all of them. I know YouTube likes to, shadow ban and do all these other things, but there is some breakout podcasts that are really starting to impact that youth train of thought on how they view the world and whatnot. And do you see that possibly as being something that the Republican Party, both state and Gwinnett, can maybe foster in terms of bringing out some opinions that they may not otherwise hear on the local news or the national news?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes sort of hand in hand with talking about how Trump is a straight shooter and says what's on his mind. I think the vast majority of people every day, whether at work, home, or school, they have the desire and the want to say what's on their mind. But in most cases, we can't, or they choose not to because of who we're around or our surroundings. And then when we're in a quiet place with people that we love and trust, that's when we can literally say what's on our mind, how it is, unfiltered, and having the freedom and the comfort to do that. It's what most people seek out. And I think we are in a place to capitalize on that. I think specifically with those younger demographics here in Gwinnett County. I think just us meeting them where they are, I think that's the biggest gap is we got to seek them out and be that person for them.
And I know you're a man of faith. I saw that in your bio. What role does the church have with the cultural and political divide that we have in terms of bringing the country back together again?
In my professional opinion, I would say the church or churches have a responsibility and an obligation to preach the word of the Lord, but also to hold people accountable. They have that moral authority and weight to do so. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of churches rear back on that and choose to be tight-lipped. There's a few churches with a few pastors that are bold and brave, and they call it how it is, and I love that. But that's a responsibility and obligation. As professors of the word, they should really be doing that. But I don't see we don't have a lot of that or enough of that happening, which is really disappointing.
And you know, that's interesting too, because I think with my generation, I'm the last of the baby boomers, where we saw the baby boomers kind of waning on the religious side of the fence. Then you had the Gen Zs and the millennials, and they didn't know what was going on because they were the children of the boomers, and the boomers didn't do a very good job of lifting up religious values and things of that nature, traditions and whatnot. I see the younger group now, though, the children that are in high school now, the college age students. I think they're desperately searching for something. And I see reports of a lot more religious involvement, or at least seeking things of a religious nature with that population. Is that something that the the Republican Party also tries to encourage? I mean, do you do that through the party or do you do that through the church? Can you do it through both?
I would say that's a beautiful opportunity for a strategic partnership for both the party and churches. And I know it's important for churches to remain strictly nonpartisan, but at the end of the day, talking about faith is just talking about faith. And I think when you have younger people, I've been seeing it here in Gwinnett County specifically, you have younger people that believe there is a higher being that plays a role in their life successes and their life story. They have a higher degree of commitment to integrity and doing what is right and help out the community. And I've seen that many times over, but I think it's a great opportunity for strategic partnerships for our party to work with churches to help facilitate those environments, but also help uplift those younger crowds that need it.
On a personal note, did you ever have a position that you held in somewhere along in your journey that you no longer hold? And if that's the case, what changed your mind? It could be political, religious, anything.
Yeah, specifically with religion. There was a point in my religious journey where moving from state to state, I was in the military for a while, and moving from state to state, trying to find a good church. We came to Atlanta. We found a church, and I was of the Catholic religion. I had a Catholic upbringing, so we found a Catholic church here, and the Catholic church that we went to, which was in Douglas County at the time, it seemed to me they were just all about money. They were directly talking to people about give us your money in so many words. And I was like, I don't like how that feels. I'm kind of done with it. So I kind of walked away from the church, just cold turkey, just like that. And I was like, this is not good. So I prayed about it. My wife talked to me about it, and I started doing my own investigative research. I ended up reading a book that's called "The Case for Christ" and the case for a Creator. A journalist from Chicago named Lee Strobel wrote these books. He also made a DVD compartment series with them. But it's very interesting. The Case for the Creator is the one that really brought me back about how perfect the world and the universe is, and how it couldn't be by chance. And the science actually shows how there had to be a creator. And just through my prayer and seeing that, it was just an epiphany. I came back to church roaring like never before.
And I read a fantastic article on the internet several months ago, and it was about DNA and how DNA is literally code. It's like computer code. It's just like any program you would write. And even Bill Gates and notable technological figures in our country have noted that there's just something almost designer edge, in our all the way down to our DNA. And I think that should tell you more or less that there really was a designer, and that there is something in there, that there's a power that's higher than us that created such an intricate design, such as human beings and the animals on the planet.
Oh, so very well said. I mean, the opportunity for that to be a mild coincidence is so minutely small. To your point, it certainly proves that the creator had a perfect vision and created the perfect art, which is humans.
Well, let me ask you too. We're heading to midterm elections, and midterm elections generally don't bode well for the incumbent president. It generally swings the other party's direction. We can always pray and work our tails off and hope that we're going to be, the odd person out in terms of the outcome of the election. But heading towards the midterms, with what you all have strategized as a local county party, what would you consider to be success for the Republican Party in Gwinnett County, and maybe even brought it to the state too? What would you consider to be success heading into the midterms?
For me, we have to win some seats. And this is at the county and at the state level. There's been so many folks that have come to me about their House representative that is on the other side of the aisle, that they tried to reach out to them, but as soon as they make it known they're not of that same party affiliation, they get the cold shoulder, no response. And then some of the things that those House representatives are doing on their behalf, they don't agree with. So to keep that focus on getting us to win some seats, we have to create the education for everybody about what's being done, who's in power is doing it, and then what the alternatives could look like. So again, I talked about I'm really trying to source opportunities to find viable candidates for some of these seats we're trying to turn in 2026. But it comes down to basic education, because the sad truth is the average voter is not as informed as they should be. And I know this for myself from running as a candidate. I know this for myself from going to different groups or people reaching out to me. It will be the day before voting deadline, and there's scathing list of people saying, "Hey, who should I vote for? Why should I vote for him?" And if we allow people to get to that point, where it's the day before deadline, and they're still undecided, then we failed them as far as giving the education they need to make an informed choice. So that's what it comes down to for me specifically, outside of picking candidates.
And I think the party really needs to do something too, from a state level all the way down to the county elected officials. We need to look at where their money's coming from, because a lot of the Democrats, especially for the federal offices, the money's coming from outside the state of Georgia, and large amounts outside the state of Georgia. And I think we need to have a sounding the wake up call moment to let people know, are we letting people from outside the state run Georgia? Are we forcing their views in on our state in terms of federal policy and everything else? Is there any type of system that you all have in Gwinnett that's kind of pulling out the facts, especially in the senatorial race? Because John Ossoff, if you look at him, you think, oh, nice young man, mild mannered, doesn't really, say a lot, these types of things. But if you look at his policies and you look at where his money comes from, you can make a pretty sound case against the man.
I would agree. I would even talk about his voting record as well. That's a big case about him. But you make a very valid point about the funding. Even when Stacey Abrams was running against Kemp, she was fully funded from essentially California. And the case is that you're bringing up is Georgians need to understand that they have this lovely endowment of funds to campaign with, not by contributors of Georgia, which should illustrate that the people of Georgia aren't necessarily supportive of this candidate because they're not opening their wallets to him. So I think maybe getting a funding index report card out to the people to show who was Georgia funded, to give you an idea of who's Georgia supported, will be a great idea. So I love that concept you're bringing up, but a lot of people don't even understand how to look that up. So we have to be that medium to provide that information and say, hey, just so you know, this candidate got 80% of their funds from blue states outside of Georgia.
Right. Absolutely. And you were so right with Stacey Abrams. I mean, it was the Silicon Valley billionaires that were funding her campaign. And it was like, goodness gracious, look at California. Look what's happened to California. Do we want a repeat? And it's just trying to get people to wake up to this. I mean, a lot of people have moved from California, New York, Illinois, because they're failing states. And one thing we always try to say here locally in my area, when we have one of those folks that move into the community, we say, we love you. We're glad you're here. Just don't bring your politics with you. That's all we ask.
That's such a common conversation, because I don't think they realize why they left their state, right? So to your point, in my neighborhood, just my little neighborhood, my subdivision, the last, I think, 4 houses that have been sold have been from California, New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, right? And they talk about the cost of living was up there, the infrastructure was terrible, the local economy was going bad. I don't think I don't think they put 2 and 2 together and say, why was it failing up there? Why were things getting so bad? And it's tough to try and broach that conversation and say, well, let's look at the facts of where you came from, so you understand what contributed to the downfall of your city or your town. And to your point, leave your politics there, because if you come here with that mindset, you're going to turn this to where you came from. We'll have to leave, just like you had to leave that place. But that's always a fun conversation to try and broach with your neighbors.
Yeah, and California is one of the few states that can lose over $20 billion and not know where they spent it. On the homeless situation, they had $24 billion and they have no idea where the money went. I'm like, how do you lose $24 billion?
And here is the interesting part. Going back to my earlier comment about the average voter just doesn't have enough information. Gavin Newsom has a high chance of being reelected, just because people they genuinely just don't know. He's Hollywood guy, has a good smile. He's real charismatic, and people will use that. You say that's enough to win my vote, versus looking at his policies, his voting record, his fiscal transparency, his fiscal conservatorship. No, that's again, I think that's a party thing. We got to get the information to the voter and say, if you want to vote for this person, know these things, these bullet points about them, successes, failures, side by side. But we have to help the average voter get information and feel confident about who they want to vote for.
And on voting, let's talk about voter integrity for a second too.
Oh, yeah.
There was some voter integrity legislation at the General Assembly. It did not. I don't even think it came out of committee. I know it didn't go to both sides of the both houses. But what are we supposed to do? Are we going to stay with the machine? Should we go to paper ballots? What's your take on it?
My take is the machines are the worst possible thing we should be dealing with. I think the hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots is the only way to have a secure enough election that people have confidence in. I've seen so many instances where these machines were tested and tested and tested, and the glitches, the Wi-Fi capacity, the vulnerabilities open the door for malfeasance. And to close that door shut and keep it secure and dual control, hand counted ballots are just the only way to go. And I don't understand where the struggle was from that bill not making it from one house to the other. It's pretty no nonsense. It's pretty straightforward, but that lets me know that there are people that don't want hand counted ballots for whatever reason that may be, probably to steal another election again. But I would also add this is when it comes to voter integrity, that's one of those bills that I would assume is common sense, right? I think everybody wants to feel confident, secure that their ballots, that their choice is successfully making it to the other side. And if we don't have that confidence, then anything could happen, which we saw in 2020.
I know Secretary of State Raffensperger, who is a Republican, his claim as to why he doesn't want to get out of the machines was because Georgians want to have an immediate vote count and know who won before they get out of bed. And my position has always been, no, I want to know it was a fair election. I don't care if I find out at 7 a.m. the next day or at 12 noon the next day. I don't care about the time. I want to make sure that my vote was counted properly and it was a fair election.
Yeah, I can't agree with Rafi on that idea. I think he's trying to vote on convenience, which I think that's what the world is on now. They have smartphones, you can get it now. I want instant gratification. But your point was eloquent, it's just so eloquent. I would rather have it done right and wait. And even now at this point, we're still waiting. Right? You go to bed at 2 a.m. in the morning, and then you go to the work at lunchtime, and it's still like 94% of the ballots still counted. So it's still a problem. Right. So if we're gonna wait, let's do it right. Let's do it securely. Let's not have any confusion.
Right. We've got a two-part series that we did with Garland Favorito for Voter GA. And we go over the history of how we got into the computer voting in the first place. And let me tell you, it is the ugliest history you have ever seen. Um, a lot of money changing hands and different personalities, both Republicans and Democrats, I'm sorry to say, who got involved in this system of pulling the machines into our voting, and that'll be coming out. It's in post production now, but yeah, when we're going to try to put that out there and show people exactly how we got into this situation, and hopefully it'll help public momentum sway that legislation through next session. But one of the things that we've often said, and it came out in the series that we ran, was if it's on a computer and there's any way to get into it, hardline cable, Wi-Fi, flash drive, any type of way to get in, is hackable. And there are a number of people who can get in there and hack any machine that's made. There's one guy by the name of Harry Hursty, who's an international expert. He was hacking machines right in front of people and showing them. But I do know in federal court, it was one of Voter GA's lawsuits that they filed. They had an expert come in and hack the voting machine right in front of the judge. So, if you can do that on a moment's notice and hack it right there in front of the judge, and Thomas Jefferson wins your local county election on the computer, then, what in the world are we doing with these machines? And the drop boxes were another thing too. Oh my gosh, why did we do drop boxes? They weren't actually even legal. The law didn't allow you to do it. They declared an emergency and said we got to do drop boxes, but I think that just led to a lot of at least distrust, if not, illegal voting.
Yeah, I mean, first, Garland Favorito is an amazing guy. I had a chance to meet him out at the Gold Dome earlier this year during one of those Senate bill hearings, and the amount of passion he has around this and the amount of work he's put in is just it's immeasurable. So he's a great, great guy. But you talk about the ballot boxes and all these things, and there's again different groups working on election integrity, but we found so many instances of confirmed cheating. And you just mentioned that they were able to reproduce that in the courtroom in front of a judge. And the question still lies: if we see that this thing has a risk opportunity or vulnerability, why do people fight to keep these machines? And I think you called it earlier. They have a vested interest. And again, unfortunately, Republicans and Democrats alike sometimes have a vested interest in this, and they will play whatever part they got to play to make their own best interests come to fruition, as like for the people. But it's just mind boggling that could be on public display. There's not more outrage from the public about it.
Well, one of the biggest problems we have now is lawfare. And I think lawfare, we used to see it against Trump and, hire federal officials on federal issues. We're now starting to see it at the state and local levels too. And one of the cases that really stands out to me was when the Georgia Board of Elections actually passed a regulation that you had to hand count the ballots and make sure they matched the number of people who came in and registered to vote at that precinct. Now, you would think, and that's not tallying the votes for each individual candidate, it's just counting the pieces of paper. They sued, got an injunction, and somehow they thought, and the excuse was that they weren't trained to do that process, and there wasn't enough time to train them. And I'm like, you're counting pieces of paper. And Brad Raffensperger, unfortunately, was one of the loudest critics in that case and said, we don't have time to train people to do this. And I'm like, I mean, if we can't get people to count pieces of paper, and that requires a lot of training, man, the educational system has just gone completely out of whack.
Man, I hate that it happened that way. And although I am the proud chairman of the county party, and I love the party here, the people that we have, all Republicans aren't great, just like all Democrats are great. But people like Raffensperger, when you do something like that, you're telling people indirectly where you stand. And if you're using the excuse that I can't have humans count pieces of paper, that they need training for that, you're just indirectly telling people you're not interested in having them verify the totals. And again, to your point, not verifying who they voted for, we're just verifying there's so many votes, there's so many ballots. Okay, at least that matches. We're not even verifying the candidate. So if you're trying to stop verification at that level, I have larger concerns than the ballots itself.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we've gone over a number of topics. Is there anything that you wanted to let the viewers know, the people of Gwinnett County know, that we didn't discuss in the interview?
It sounds like they sent some good questions in ahead of time. So I love the engagement, and that's what I'm after is the engagement. There are a lot of different committees that I have to appoint folks to that are going to be committed to the work, that will be committed to raising the awareness for voters, but also for different parts of the county. So what I want them to know is that if you want to get involved, please reach out to us. We would love to partner with you to help make our county a better place for you, your family, your loved ones, and the next generation in Gwinnett. So you could email me directly at chairman@GwinnettRepublicans.org. I'd be more than happy to have dialogue with you or anybody in your household that wants to be part of it, but also help us turn things around. We cannot refuse to help because we want to get involved, but everybody get involved and be engaged.
Do you have monthly meetings in Gwinnett?
Yes. So we have monthly meetings for the executive committee, which is just the board, but we have monthly meetings that are alternative. So every odd month we'll have a meeting. So the next meeting for the county committee will be July 10th at 7:30 p.m. So we're moving our meetings all around to different parts of Gwinnett County for this year. So we can be situated in all different parts of Gwinnett, so we can reach all the constituents that have conservative values and want to get involved.
And do you train poll watchers through the party?
We do have poll watcher training, and we have two folks on our election board that are very experienced, very knowledgeable. And right now, I think the Public Service Commission election started underway with early voting, but we will be doing training after that as well too, to try and get people to get involved in doing that, because we don't have enough poll watchers, and we want them to do the job well and make sure they're enforcing the integrity.
I can only imagine the number of precincts that Gwinnett County has with your population. That's got to be a massive undertaking.
It is. It just finding the amount of people is already a challenge, but to find the people that really want to do it and keep their eyes on the ball, those people we're really looking for. But poll watching training, I mean, it's we're always offering that.
Well, let me tell you, we'll end at that point, and I just want to let you know, it's great to see a younger face in charge of one of our biggest counties. It's good to have a more youthful, energetic perspective coming in, and we really need that. We need that in a lot of our suburban counties. And so I think having somebody that's younger in that position will help bringing the younger people into the party too. And we'll look to you as kind of a light that we can glean from and take some things from you and what you're doing in Gwinnett and use it in the rest of metropolitan Atlanta and the state.
Well, you set the bar pretty high, so I'll make sure not to disappoint. So I'll be doing those college campus meetings, and I love the conversation. I appreciate you inviting me on today.
Great. Well, thanks for carving out some time with us. We appreciate it. And hopefully this won't be the last time we see you on Editorial Interchange.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this interview with Justice Nwaigwe in Gwinnett County. It's so nice to see younger people getting involved in leadership positions in our county Republican parties. If you want to help Justice out, and if you want to be part of the Republican Party in Gwinnett County, well, we'll put some links in the description. They have meetings every other month, and they also train the poll workers. So if you want to be a poll observer during one of the elections, they can train you to do that. As far as we're concerned, if you would like and subscribe and share, that's what makes our system work. And if you have anybody else in Gwinnett County that you want us to interview, we'd love to hear from you. Just go to editorialinterchange.net and put it in the communications link and send us the message. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.